Welcome to What the F is Going On in Latin America and the Caribbean, a popular resistance broadcast of hot news out of the region. In partnership with Black Alliance for Peace Haiti Americas team, Code Pink, Common Frontiers, Council on Hemispheric Affairs, Friends of Latin America, Interreligious Task Force on Central America, Massachusetts Peace Action, and Task Force on the Americas, we broadcast Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube Live, including channels for The Convo Couch, Popular Resistance, and Code Pink. Post-broadcast recordings can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Telegram, radindiemedia.com, and now under podcasts at popularresistance.org. Today's episode, Mexico's Secretary of Foreign Affairs resigns to run for president. And I'm happy to invite back to this program my good friend and independent journalist, Alina Duarte. She's joining our conversation today from Mexico City. And so we're very happy to have her with us. And before we start our conversation, let me give all of you just a brief background as to what happened Tuesday here in Mexico City. It's kind of shifted the ground a little bit, but it's also kind of exciting as to what's beginning to unfold here in advance of next year's presidential election. So here you are, everyone. Mexican Secretary of Foreign Relations Marcelo Ebrard, one of the leading contenders to be the country's next president, said on Tuesday he will resign to focus on winning the presidential nomination of the ruling Morena party for the 2024 presidential elections. Ebrard, a former mayor of Mexico City, wants to succeed President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador as the standard bearer of the left of center National Regeneration Movement, which we called Partido Morena. And Morena now dominates national politics here in Mexico. So with that brief background, because I want Alina to share with us all her knowledge, I want all of you to welcome Alina, and I'm so happy to have you back. You're so incredibly busy, and we should talk about your new project also before the end of the program, because it's very exciting, and I know you're like living it. So I'm really thankful for your time.
No, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you at WTF. It's going a lot to work. Yeah, thank you, Terry.
So let's talk about Ebrard's decision to resign on Tuesday. Boy, it was like, I think for a lot of people outside of Mexico, it's like, wow, big surprise. For those of us inside Mexico, kind of knew it was coming or suspected it was a possibility.
Well, actually, this is the beginning of the race for presidency in 2024. We've been talking about this here in Mexico for the last weeks or even months, but no one decided to say, like, this is the beginning, 3, 2, 1, we start. And the chancellor was the one who decided to resign to the cabinet of Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador. And we are not really surprised because he said these kind of things for the last at least 3 or 2 months. He said that everyone who wanted to be the candidate should resign. And I mean, this was an advice for the governor of Mexico City, Claudia Sheinbaum, for the senator, Ricardo Monreal, and also for the Minister of Government, Adán Augusto López. Those are the principal persons who could really succeed, like being the next president of Mexico. But with this decision of Ebrard, we really are into like the beginning of the race for presidency. And now we're talking about a counselor specifically because this is the real battle for president, for being president next year. It's not a battle between the right and the left. It's a battle inside Morena. All the polls says that next year people prefers to have another candidate for Morena than from the opposition, from the PAN, PRI, PRD, and to be honest, I think that that's amazing after having almost 100 years of the PRI, and now we are talking about a progressive government that is going to have like a second episode, a second part of Obradorismo. And that's why it's so important now what they're doing, the chancellor, the governor of Mexico City, and also Adán Augusto, the second one in charge of this country. All of them want to be the next president, and I'm pretty sure that one of them is going to be in 2024. In a year, actually, in exactly 1 year, Terry, we will know who's going to be the next president. We are going to have the elections on June in next year. So it starts also, like this regressive counting, like for Obrador, we're knowing that at this point we have only a year and a half of his administration. So let's see what happens during the next also weeks, but also this Sunday that Morena, the party, officially is gonna give the requirements for the candidates, for the persons, the people who wants to be the next president.
So this is, maybe we should talk a little bit about Sunday for the US audience specifically, how, because this is internal party politics for Morena, how they're going to define campaign rules, who runs and under what conditions. Is that correct? That's this coming Sunday, which is what, the 11th?
Yeah,
11th
there's a lot of expectations, Terry. Actually, this Sunday we are all just waiting to see what's gonna happen.
Just sitting on pins and
Yeah, it seems like I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like all the media, I don't trust that kind of media, but also close people close to the party, to Morena, they're saying that maybe not only the chancellor has to resign, but also the rest of the candidates. It was Mario Delgado, the president of Morena. He said that this Sunday, the National Council of Morena will discuss and approve the terms of the call to define the 2024 presidential candidate. He said that he's gonna settle the dates and requirements for people, as I said, who wish to participate in this process. So he also said that maybe it's on the table the possibility, right, of resigning, requesting a license to be analyzed on this national council on this Sunday. We've been saying, I don't know how to translate this, corcholatas, no, like the tap of the
yeah,
when you have a soda. So
to pop the cap.
Exactly. So we are all expecting what they're gonna decide, because basically you remember that Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador, he said during the last year or more that the way that Morena have to decide the candidate for governors, for deputies, for the senators is the surveys, are the polls. So this it was the only, I don't know. Also this Sunday we're gonna know what this kind of polls it's gonna say. At the beginning we knew that they're gonna call you and they're gonna say, do you trust Marcelo Ebrard and Claudia Sheinbaum and Adán Augusto and Monreal, and also they're gonna ask you if you like them, if you trust them, if you consider that they support women, if they support the LGBTQ agenda, all of these kind of questions. But also this national council that is gonna take part this Sunday, they're gonna decide if it's gonna be just the one question that who do you want to be your candidate? Who do you prefer? So I think it's better, in my opinion. To be honest, I've never been into deciding who's gonna be a candidate. But I feel like like Morena and also the president are taking a lot of measures, a lot of decisions to take care to care about the whole process. As I've been talking to you during months, it's not easy just to think what's next. Like after having these leaderships like Hugo Chavez, like Evo Morales in the region, and now with Andres Manuel, that is a leader not only in Mexico but in the whole continent. I think unity should prevail on these elections, the interim elections, but it's gonna depend not only on the decisions on this Sunday, but also about the process that, like political formation, the media outlets, like independent media outlets. So it's pretty important for me, for leftist people, I guess, for a lot of militants and of the so-called for transformation, what's going to happen this Sunday, and maybe next Monday we're going to know if they have to resign. Claudia Sheinbaum, Adán Augusto López, and all of these candidates, the ones who be the candidate, or they're gonna just keep in their places, like in functions. So let's see, Terry, this Sundays. Let's have a coffee to talk.
We may need more than caffeine on Sunday.
Because I guess that a lot of people were gonna just waiting for the announcements for these decisions of next Sunday.
So this is fascinating. For those of us outside of Mexico politics, and that what is going to be decided on Sunday is, well, I guess all political parties have their various processes for deciding who runs, but the possibility of having all four major MORENA presidential candidates resign their current positions, which leaves vacancies in very, very prominent, a cabinet position in the Secretariat of Foreign Relations, Exterior Relations. The governor, mayor, it's one city of Mexico is a state, so Claudia is the governor and mayor of Mexico City. So to vacate that position and Monreal's position, those are, of course, it allows other people to step up and be groomed for the future too, but it also, I could see it also creating an even playing field for all of them to start campaigning. And there's a really good article that you and I were talking about earlier in El País. I'll put the link in the program notes for the audience. It's in Spanish, but you can translate it to English. And I think it was published yesterday, Alina, where it really lays out very clearly what Lopez Obrador's vision is going forward. It is, and if it plays out, it's brilliant. And I would say the biggest theme that he's looking is to not pass the baton to one anointed person, but to create a team of people who can continue the second phase of Obradorismo, or continue the fourth transformation, which we did almost a 2-hour-long talk a couple months ago about what the fourth transformation is and why this team, he sees it necessary to build a team. The strategy is really brilliant if it planned, and extraordinarily responsible of him as an outgoing leader. Extraordinarily responsible for attempting to preserve, I think in the article, this is the political current that has been created. Nobody's him. It's like we were talking earlier. Nobody's Chavez, nobody's Rafael Correa, nobody's Evo Morales. So nobody's, Lopez Obrador. But with a team of people, you could compensate for that, have strengths in multiple areas, without this joke among, I'm the anointed one and you're not. Which
What I'm really surprised there is like how careful they're being in the process, and specifically, I'm real sure that it's the President Lopez Obrador who's taking, the main role, taking care about this, being very careful of these next elections. We may have political difference with every candidate, with Claudia Sheinbaum, Marcelo Ebrard, ideologically or with their administrations or whatever. But the president decided to call a meeting days ago during the night. It was in a restaurant in downtown at Zocalo. During the night, they had a dinner. He called the principal candidates and also members of the party and governors. And I think the decisions that they took during that dinner, that's what we're gonna listen to next during the next Sunday. That's why we are just so excited about listening what's next, what they're gonna decide. In this meeting, I think that they talk about what could happen, what next. Like what happened if Shane Bounds, like wins the presidency and Ebrard, does he has to leave? I don't think so. I think he has been a very like brilliant chancellor. He has materialized the foreign policy that AMLO has been trying just to say every morning, like we're gonna support Peru, we're gonna support Evo, and the chancellor has done it really, really good, has made it amazingly. So this article that you're talking about, it says something like if Sheinbaum remains in the presidency, Ebrard would be an extraordinary political operator among legislators, and if Ebrard is the successor, Sheinbaum would give him a legitimacy among the workers of the chamber. So they're trying just to figure out in this decision of what's next. If someone wins the presidency, we need the rest of the candidates to be part of this process. And it's something that, for example, after a coup, we don't see now in Bolivia. We see the fight between Evo Morales and Lucho Arce and David Choquehuanca, the vice president. So I think AMLO is pretty smart, and he's thinking not in 2024, he's thinking almost in 2030, like he's just like thinking what's next after Lopez Obrador. And it's the big question in the whole region. What's next after these big leaders? That, of course, as you said, they're not Evo Morales, they're not Rafael Correa, they're not, but someone has to take this leadership and go straight ahead. And specifically in this moment, when we see and that the US is desperate, like in what's going on actually in Latin America. The name of this program, I bet that the White House and the State Department are all the time like, what the fuck is going on?
Those Mexicanos, what are they doing now? They're like, but really, they all, I mean, the president is brilliant, and he is looking at preserving his legacy, and it's we all say the fourth transformation is a 20-year project. It's not something one president in one 6-year term. And in Mexico, the Constitution only allows for the president to serve one 6-year term. Yeah. And so how do you ensure what your administration has begun to create? How do you ensure the continuation of it? And I think, to pull all the major candidates in as a team. And it's like, yes, it is important individually who becomes president. How could it not be? For Ebrard, this is a dream for decades for him, and you can't blame him for that. And he's been a compelling foreign minister, and has the skill and the experience, and they all do. They all have good resumes. They all have experience. They've all been groomed very well. And so, but the greater thing is, or what the president is expressing, the most important thing is to preserve the current political movement, the current political space that's been created, and take it forward. And it's going to take a team of people to do that. And hopefully everybody will come out of Sunday's meeting believing that themselves. I'm sure they do. I mean, because they've all been very loyal to creating the fourth transformation. But individual politics are tough, for all of us. It's hard, that's human nature, and it's tough, but this is something bigger than each person. And so many of us have so much hope on Mexico right now in showing the rest of the hemisphere how to do this.
Yeah, I totally agree, Terry. And listening to you, I'm just thinking about what happened the last 20 years in the whole region. And not only about the presidential succession, it's about the role of Venezuela during like the beginning of the 20s. And now the role of Mexico. We have to remember that Pedro Castillo, the former president of Peru, he was detained when he was going to the Mexican embassy. A lot of people here in Mexico is now they got asylum after the traitor in Ecuador, the traitor of Lenin Moreno. Several people who are persecuted by its government, they got asylum here in Mexico. Also, after the coup of Evo Morales, a lot of Bolivian people are also here in Mexico City. And now we are saying that this is a kind of oasis in the region about this kind of issues. But also I'm thinking about the how important is not only the presidential candidate who's next. It's also about the people's organizing themselves. The role that Morena has, for example, now Morena has 3 million of people affiliated. That it's a whole world in the region. 3 million of people here in Mexico, and 60% also the pools of these journals, of these like El Universal, who is a media outlet from the opposition directly. Even they are saying that AMLO has between 60 and 70% of approval now in this moment. And also, I'm thinking about what happened with the presidents in the region. Evo Morales used to have also a lot of approval. A lot of the people was, supporting his government. And the minimum details that you decided not to confront the right wing or not to confront the oligarchy, they can make a coup. So I think one of the challenges here is not only to decide who's next, who's the next candidate, but also to see all of these people who support and who's making possible this government. There are millions of people who every day now in this country are changing because of the president all the morning, all the, with this mañanera, with this presidential conference in the morning. People are learning.
Every single morning, 7 a.m., he's on his Twitter feed with millions of people watching. I mean, it's like he's like the most popular thing at 7 a.m. on all of Twitter, in the whole Twitter sphere. It's just incredible.
YouTube 2 weeks ago or something like that, there was this news that saying that AMLO was the principal streamer in Spanish. So millions of people, not only in Mexico, but the rest of the continent, listen what's saying every morning. And that's why, not only because of this conference, but also all of these social programs, about a lot of things, people are changing. Of course, there's a lot of people who says that AMLO is not a Marxist, he's not a revolutionary, he's not like a real communist, whatever. But he didn't promise that kind of things. And what he said, he was a wellness state, and he's trying to build it every single day. I think it's not easy to live this country, we need to remember in 2006, we started a so-called war on drugs that like started in 2006, but nowadays we have more than 300,000 people disappeared, 300 people killed, 300,000 people killed. So it's pretty complicated to be the president of this country. And after that, there are so many people who's trusting what is doing Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. There are so many people who are organizing themselves. We've seen the mobilizations during the last month, the two, I think one of the biggest mobilizations I've ever seen in my whole life, supporting the president. So things are totally changing, and I'm really glad that the president, that even the next the candidates of Morena who wants to be the next president, they're being very careful in the process. So let's see. I'm really, it's a little bit scary, exciting. I don't know how to describe what's gonna happen next Sunday, when we're gonna know who's gonna, like, how we're gonna decide who's the candidate of Morena for the next presidential elections.
You know, it's the inevitable, right? I mean, for the last 6 years, everyone in Mexico has known AMLO has 6 years, and it's almost hard to believe that 6 years is, you know, like there's
I know
months remaining. Well, 11 months. The elections are June. I mean, it's almost impossible to believe, but it is the inevitable, and so it is going to be really, really important how it is all, you know, initiated for the transition. Is, you know, I hear from you, and I just want to share with the audience, you know, for Alina, she's a young female Mexicana. I don't know how old you are, 30. I shouldn't say that to the public, but you know, half my age, folks. So for her to go to mobilizations and various other political events here in Mexico City with her, and have her say, you know, never in my lifetime did I think we would have a president like AMLO. Never did I think young people would have a vision for their future and be able to participate in, you know, in politics, in education, in the economy, and in so many things. You know, this is, you know, it brings tears to my eyes sharing this, because you are the future of the country. And so for you to be feeling this, to say, never did you think you would be, you know, that you were going to be born into a country with this sort of transformation, it's really, really, you know, it's very powerful, and so important, you know, for me as an older person to see the future of this political process solidified. And, you know, there's potentially a team, you know, a really solid team of 4 people that's going to come out of this meeting on Sunday, this Partido Morena meeting. There could be a really, really strong team that comes out of that meeting to take the country into this second phase of Obradorismo. Or am I saying that correct? Obradorismo.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard. Lots of R's there.
Yeah, yeah, that's the challenge for the Obradorismo. What to do for the next generations who didn't grow up, as in the Chavismo in Venezuela, as the revolution, the Cuban Revolution. You know, like now there are younger people that they are growing now with the change. They didn't grew up under the PRI, under the PAN, and that's the challenge for us as journalists, as not so young people now. You know, when I see these 20 years old guys just going and protesting and doing everything in support of this government, it's just amazing. It's like I feel a little bit older now. But we're gonna see during the next days, during the next weeks, if the fourth transformation is a real team. And for example, in the case of the candidates, we're gonna see if they really have a relay in their own spaces, if they have officials, people, a team to be up to the moment. And one of the challenges is how to deepen this process, what to do for the next, because I'm amazed by how things have changed. For example, me, like I, as a journalist, I've been talking about Latin America for the last 10 years and no one listened to me, you know, in this country. We were always just thinking about the North, about the US, about Canada, about the like Europe. And now people are just asking me, for example, in my case, like what's going on in Peru, what's going on in Venezuela? Is it real that it's a dictatorship in these governments? And for me, it's impressive because I've seen during the last 10 years that this big change, for example, the decisions about of the president in Latin America has changed the mentality of Mexicans. You know, when Evo was coming to Mexico exile, I remember that people were just shocked because they were asking me things like in the streets. They were saying like how AMLO is capable to give asylum to a dictator, and you know this kind of things. But they were saying at the same time like, no, AMLO wouldn't do that, so Evo might not be a dictator. So you know, these kind of conclusions have changed a lot of things. Yesterday, you know, there was a rally at the Colombian embassy, and there were, I mean,
which I attended, by the way.
Yeah. So people now are going to this kind of events. We at the Political Formation Institute of Morena, where I work at in the international formation, a lot of people are just coming to our events. It doesn't matter if it's about the Sahrawi Republic or if it's about Latin America. There's a like, I don't know if it's the beginning or it's just like a renewal of these processes of internationalism of Mexican left. And I'm really happy about that. I just think about how to deepen this process because it's not perfect. We still have a lot of violence. We still have a lot of feminicides, the aggressions about against the journalists, for example, you know, like there are so many drug cartels still in this country. There are so many relationship with these oligarchs, the transnational capitals, and that's why I could give an explanation about the violence against the journalists, and not this big narrative that the president is attacking the journalists and the media. You know, in that way, for example, in my case, I wouldn't have to be under this mechanism of protection of journalists that I am in, because I'm a leftist. You know, like people recognize in me like the journalist that it's kind of part, but something is very critical of the fourth transformation. But I received threats, death threats last year. So there is still a lot of these issues every day in Mexico, and I think that that's the big challenge: how to deepen this process against violence, against the feminicide, against for example, the role that the transnationals had in this country. We have 1/3 of our territory given to these transnationals. So we need to do that. We need to deepen the fourth transformation. Some people say that we are ready for the fifth transformation. It's like, no, stop.
Haven't finished this one yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
like we don't need another one. We need to deepen this.
for deepen it and widen it for the audience, you know, a number of things that you have mentioned, the resources given to transnational corporations, the drug cartels, the violence against journalists and women. These are issues that existed long before AMLO became president. And I think this, to me personally, this is why, you know, one president serving one constitutional 6-year term cannot undo everything that he or she has inherited, you know, over the last 50 to 100 years. It can't, not in any country, it can't all be undone in one, and certainly not in the peaceful manner that, or in in a constitutional manner through the legislative and electoral process. It's going to take, it clearly needs more than 6 years. And again, this is why it's going to be so important, what comes out of Sunday. Is there a team prepared to take the fourth transformation forward, to deepen it, as you say, to widen it and move forward? Because there is still a lot that has to be undone before you can move, more forward. But it's so exciting for you younger people. And I think you told me, or your mother or your aunt, when, who was in college, like when I was, that never in a million years as, college students would you ever, in those days when we were in college, think that Mexico, like yourself, we never would have a government that you have now,
Yeah, this is the government that my family fought for, and they, of course, they're pretty happy, and me as a not that young person, but I think I am. Still I am.
Yeah.
Still young. I think that it's impressive the change that we've seen during the last 5 years, even when I've been so critical, for example, in terms of the migration policy, for example, that Mexico has, that we're still deporting, we're still treating really bad migrants, and we are condemning all the time what the US is doing against us, and we're doing exactly the same, not exactly, but sometimes they have a lot of these kind of policies. Also, I mean, generationally talking, of course, I would love to. I think it's pretty funny because during the last years I've been saying, like, of course we need a feminist national movement that fight for women's rights. That, like, sometimes I remember AMLO all the time saying we are not machistas, but we're not feminists. We are humanists. And it was like, no, we're feminists. But this year, last March 8th, for the first time, he said, I am feminist. So, of course,
so March 8th was International Women's Day. March 8th was International Women's
Day. Yeah, he said so, so it's like, of course, we can change not only AMLO, but the militants, the left, like the leftist people. So there's a lot to do. It's not, the fourth transformation, I think it's the beginning. When I all the time say, like, the 2024 elections is not the way, it's not the point that we are aspiring to go. It's just another kind of beginning of another kind of fight. We're not gonna have AMLO every morning in the National Palace saying, like, the relationship with the media outlets and the oligarchy in this country and all of this stuff. But of course, we need to deepen the relationship with the social movements, with the feminist movement, with it was pretty good to me just to listen that during the week AMLO said something like the priorities for his government during the last year, 2024, before the elections. And he said, of course, about the infrastructure, about the Maya train, about the airport, all of this infrastructure that was kind of a symbol of his administrations. Also, he said that he was going to deepen the social programs, like, for example, well, I don't know how to translate it, like the jóvenes construyendo el futuro. Like the youth building the future. These social programs, a lot of programs for women, for young people, for the people older, all of these programs. He said that it's going to be a priority for him. And also the wages and the working conditions for the workers, the state workers, about wages, about a lot of like a whole thing about the wellness for workers. And I think he's doing really good, in this thing. He's not like promising more things. He promised he made 100 promises, and now he has accomplished, I think, 98 or 99, something like that.
Wow.
And it's a year before.
What president in the world right now can say that?
Yeah,
what president anywhere in the world right now can say that?
And Tori, it's more impressive because he made his promises before he knew that there was gonna be a pandemic and a crisis in Ukraine and an international crisis, economic crisis. So it's impressive. I don't know what he would have done if we didn't had a pandemic or something like that. But he has done whatever what he can do. Of course, I agree with some people from the left that says that we need to deepen this, and I think the way to do it is just to be with people, with political formation, with independent media outlets, with organizations in the neighborhoods, in the schools, in the universities, also with mobilizations. We've seen this week in Colombia, people defending his government, the government of Gustavo Petro, what it seems to be for what it seems to be like a coup, like a lawfare. It's the expression of lawfare. And I really believe that we can do that here in Mexico. We need to start creating conditions for the post AMLO era in this country, mobilizing, organizing, and just creating these debates with the people, for the people, and let's see what's next.
I have three things I want you to talk about quickly before we let you go. I know you've got, and where you're going is one of the things I want to talk about. But you mentioned earlier about Mexican citizens, stopping you on the street and asking you, why is Evo Morales coming here, and that there seems to be this greater awareness from those days to, which was fall of 2019. To today, literally today. And I, Alina, I really feel it's due to work like you and your peers, but also that AMLO's message of integration, regional integration, every single day in one form or another. He is uplifting that philosophy and making it possible. And, first and foremost, by reconvening the CELAC Summit here in Mexico City, September of 2021. Integration, integration, integration. And people can interpret that on many, many levels. So it spills out across the political spectrum, because integration can mean economic and trade integration. It can mean social integration. It can mean integration in, foreign policy and foreign affairs on many, many levels, cultural integration. So it's something that a broad percentage of society can relate to. And I really think that is so important in his message. And I think he really has created that an evolution among the Mexican citizenship to see, yourselves as part of greater Latin America and the Caribbean, and the need for that. It's huge, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, Terry. People now are aware that we are more Latin Americans, that part of the North,
and proudly so. Proudly.
We are pretty proud of that. I remember even when I was in the university 10 years ago, I studied international affairs, and like my colleagues, the students were saying all the time that, but what about the I don't know, the relationship with the US, with Canada, with Europe? All of them wanted to be ambassadors, and now I recognize that several people now in the streets are talking. And for example, even the meetings of the CELAC that people didn't know that used to exist. People were just streaming the meetings. They were watching in real time what AMLO was saying to Nicolás Maduro and to Lucho Arce and all of these things. People didn't do that 10 years ago. It's just pretty new to be part of Latin America in this kind of way, because there has been a lot of solidarity, of course, even with the PRI, with the exiled people, with the people that were victims of dictatorships during the 60s and 70s in Latin America. But this is pretty new because now you listen a president that every week, every 2 weeks, every other week, he's always asking the U.S. to stop the blockade against Cuba. He's condemning the dictatorship, and now in Peru, he decided to stop relationships during the coup in Bolivia against Evo Morales. You know, all of these issues is just extremely important, but also the foreign policy in Mexico has changed dramatically. You know, Terry, we met at Washington, D.C., where I was corresponding for Telesur. And we've been there. We were there in 2019 when Juan Guaido started to, you know, this issue with the coup in Venezuela and all of this. And I remember that the ambassador of Mexico to the OAS was all the time, you know, putting like a lot of pressure against Venezuela, just making friends with the government of Colombia, with Mike Pompeo at that time. I remember that. And the ambassador of Mexico were the ones who all the time were saying we need to go against Venezuela, you know, all this issue. And
They
now
were doing the US's work for them. I mean, completely integrated with the United States policy, which is not the case now.
Yeah, totally it is not. I remember our ambassador was also our chancellor, Luis Videgaray, at that moment with Enrique Peña Nieto. They were the one who were leading this process of creating the group of Lima. They were. Now we are totally in other episode of our life and our foreign policy. We are just listening to president as
a policy now is Mexico first, Mexico and her people first.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and not second to the U.S. first. And AMLO was really clear about that. And I've mentioned this to the audience multiple times, and you and I have talked about it in detail. That discourse that he gave on July 28th,
2021.
July of 2021 for the anniversary of Simón Bolívar's birth, when he said we need regional institutions, where countries sit equally at a table, where you recognize, an America for all Americans and a Mexico for all Mexicanos. It's, you're your own sovereign nation. And he has really articulated that. And probably, except for a very small portion of the wealthy business class here in Mexico, it's certainly something that everyone can identify with. He's really brought that back, that sense of sovereignty, not sense, the reality of national sovereignty. Yeah.
Actually,
he's really clear.
This is part of our constitution. It's not just like an invention of AMLO. In our Mexican constitution, now AMLO retakes what the constitution says, that it is called the Estrada doctrine of sovereignty of people, self-determination, peaceful resolution of conflicts. We used to forget during the last years with Enrique Peña Nieto, Vicente Fox, Felipe Calderón. They totally forgot that this existed, and they started just to lead this whole intervention against Cuba, against Venezuela, against Evo Morales, against everyone. And what I was saying with our ambassador at the OAS, after having this I don't know how even to say it, like this kind of people in our representation. Now our actual ambassador of Mexico to the US, now he's telling in his face, of Almagro's face, that he's a hypocritical, he's a cynical, in his face, in the heart of the OAS, just blocks away from the White House. And it's amazing. Something's changing, and it has to be like, it's totally related to the politics of AMLO in the region. We remember weeks ago, he made a call to organize regionally against the economic crisis and inflation. He got COVID, and that's why they didn't make it. But I guess that next week or something like that. I don't know if he's traveling to Bogota, to the meeting in person with Gustavo Petro. I know that Gustavo Petro actually is traveling, I don't know if today or tomorrow, to Cuba for the peace processes, with the dialogues with the ELN. But also, AMLO is gonna have a meeting, with Argentina, with Brazil, with Colombia, to do something about this economic crisis. So we are now, I really think that a new integration is possible. We had Salah, we had UNASUR at some point, but now we have AMLO, we have Lula, we have Petro. So let's see for the next years what's next.
And so let's talk about what's next for you, because you mentioned how the important role of independent journalism here in Mexico, and I would argue throughout Latin America and the Caribbean has been crucial, even in the States. But you have a new project that you're heading off to. I see somebody trying to call you off. Let's talk really quick about your new independent journalism project. I have, Alina, included links to all of the social media and YouTube accounts for your new project. Those are all in the program notes for the audience. And they can find you on social media too.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, we're launching a new media outlet. Let's see how it goes. As the meeting of the next Sunday, let's see how it goes also with our new media outlet. It is called From the Root. In Spanish is De Raíz. It is a new project that it pretends to be radical. That's why it is called From the Root. That's the meaning.
Like grassroots.
Exactly. Like being radical. What we need. So it started with the idea. We had a meeting with Pablo Iglesias from Podemos in Spain, and they're launching their own media outlet called Canal Red. So they asked us to have a program on them, a podcast about what's going on in Mexico. So we started creating that. It is called Enre, that it doesn't have like a real meaning. It's just like the beginning of phrases like in revolution, in restructuration, like this kind of issues. So that's the same in Spanish, like Enre, that's the name of the podcast. And now we're launching a whole media outlet that it's gonna start next Monday. So I'm gonna send you the links to the new page. We're gonna have. I promise that we're gonna have analysis on what's the situation in Mexico specifically, or like the conclusions of all of this discussion that we just had today, Terry. That's the role that we pretend that has this media outlet. So we're gonna have this program, this podcast every week with Canal Red of Pablo Iglesias, but also we're gonna have programs. We are trying to create a specific section. I hope to have it also on Monday to have certain analysis in English. So people from your audience can just watch what's the most relevant news on the week or even on the day. So I hope we can success on making these debates possible, this another kind of information, because even when we have a lot of YouTube channels here in Mexico, for example, Sin Censura, where I work at also, that millions of people just watch these kind of programs. We need more analysis, more debate. The corporate media in Mexico is just amazing. 11 families controls the media here in this country. So we are pretending to give a fight, a battle, just in the last year of the first administration of the Obradorismo in Mexico, but also we are ready to the fight for the communicational fight during the next years.
So, excellent. I'm so happy for you. This is really an exciting project that you've taken on, and I'm really happy. And we will be sure to watch you, and I'll be sure to share, all the links with the WTF audience, because it's just one more place to find real news, people. What's really going on outside the corporate narrative. So thank you, Alina. I'm so happy you had time for us today, and it's just so wonderful to see you and talk with you. I just really value the time that I can spend with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, always, for your support. You've been very supporting for me all the time since we met in Washington during the coup in Venezuela. And I consider you a real close friend, and I really like, I don't know how to thank all the support you give to me all the time. So thanks for having me again here in WTF.
Thank you so much. So it's a good team. It's a good team. So,
Yes.
so for the audience, I want to just remind you all, you've been watching What the F is Going On in Latin America and the Caribbean. We're a popular resistance broadcast. We broadcast on YouTube live every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the channels for the Convo Couch, Code Pink, and Popular Resistance. Post-broadcast recordings can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.